Hi, welcome back. I'm the Book Guy, and we're in the middle of a series of videos on sci-fi books. And today we're talking about the award-winning series, Children of Time by Adrian Tchaikovsky. Now this is sci-fi as it's meant to be written. This is exactly the type of sci-fi I love, where it's not just shooting lasers and superpowers and spaceships. This is deep sci-fi. It has incredible scientific accuracy, intricate world building, and some heavy discussions around the nature of the universe and humanity itself. But it's also a pretty weird concept. I won't lie, when I was reading these books and I realized what the concept was, I actually had to stop because I was laughing uncontrollably. But then I kept reading and realized how well this weird concept is handled. I never would have thought this idea would work, let alone work so well. But now let's take a look at this trilogy spoiler-free. We'll discuss what it's all about and see if these books are gonna be right for you. Let's begin. Humanity is beginning to reach the stars. The first wave of terraforming has begun, preparing new planets for human habitation. Dr. Avrana Kern has plans for one of these worlds. Kern believes she can uplift animals, granting them human levels of intelligence. She wants to set up her experiments on one of these worlds, free from human interruption, and let her creatures advance into their own society on their own planet. This would effectively turn humanity into gods. However, at the dawn of this experiment, disaster strikes. A group of humans who reject all science and fear humanity's recent advancements have launched a massive counterattack, causing an apocalyptic event on Earth. Now the last survivors of humanity from a broken Earth have come all the way to Kern's world, hoping to find their salvation. But their new Eden is already inhabited. Now two separate species lay claim to the same world, with both of their survivals hanging in the balance. Okay, so the weird thing about this series is the concept of exalted animals. Kern's experiment means that different species gain intelligence and form their own worlds. And this just made me laugh initially, because Adrian Tchaikovsky is known for his Shadows of the Apt series. It's 10 massive books, and in his own words, he called it Bug World. It's literally a high fantasy world where all the nations are different bugs. So this is the country of the praying mantis, and these guys are the dragonflies, and the scarab people, etc. And naturally the wasps are the bad guys. Damn wasps. But after Adrian finished the Shadows of the Apt series, the first book he wrote next was Children of Time. And that's the book that actually made his career. Tchaikovsky has since become a big name in fantasy and science fiction. But in many ways, it's just Bug World in space. And I'm just thinking, this guy really likes bugs.
It's kinda, well, my thing.
Yet as crazy as it sounds, the concept works. Because Tchaikovsky has just created one of the most realistic fictional worlds I've ever seen. From top to bottom, he's created culture, language, physiology, ecology, governments, gender roles, thought patterns, everything you can name. It's just incredible. Now, you might have noticed that I've mentioned no specifics, and that's because I'm not telling you what the uplifted animals are. That needs to be a surprise. But I will tell you that all 3 books have a new uplifted species. So 3 books give us 3 different hyper-realistic animal societies. So how has he done this? That's a weird thing to have a lot of knowledge about, right? Well, as a child, Tchaikovsky was always fascinated with the natural world. He wanted to understand anything that was non-human, such as animals and insects. When he graduated high school, he went on to college to study zoology and psychology. So he's just all about animals and understanding their psychology. Though as a side note, Tchaikovsky did drop out of college when he became disillusioned with the study, and he changed fields to work a regular boring day job as a legal executive. He worked in that field for 15 years while writing books on the side and trying to get published. He finally got his first book published in 2008, and even then it still took 10 more years before he earned enough to become a full-time author. So I just respect the hell out of this guy. He has worked bloody hard to get where he is today. But getting back on track, this guy has done actual college-level studies on animals and has used that to create something so well thought out and detailed. So normally I would find the concept of animal societies to just be too ambitious, too ludicrous to take seriously, or just too Disney.
Welcome to Zootopia.
But Tchaikovsky is uniquely situated to absolutely knock this out of the park. People always say, write what you know, and this is precisely why. However, this level of heavy world building can sometimes impact the plot. These three books form a very strange trilogy. So they're mostly three standalone stories with a few characters and plots that carry over. However, I would say that book 1 is very plot and character heavy, whereas books 2 and 3 are a bit lighter on those fronts. The later two books are much more what I would call thought experiments. This is something that sci-fi used to do all the time. In the past, sci-fi was almost exclusively about speculation on hypothetical scenarios. What if aliens invaded and were stronger than us? What if robots became commonplace? What if we could reach the bottom of the ocean? What if we could reanimate the dead? They're all what-if stories. And there's still a huge component of that today. Plenty of sci-fi is still based around speculation. But modern sci-fi has shifted to follow more of the Star Wars formula, which is simply telling an engaging story in a sci-fi setting. So it's much rarer these days to find a story that's all speculation. So I have to give you a heads up that in my opinion, books 2 and 3 focus more on thought experiments. There is still plot and character obviously, but there is a definite shift now. The focus becomes on building these fictional worlds and the societies of alien/animal peoples. The story becomes, what if those creatures were as smart as us? Now, I don't think there's anything wrong with this shift, but I have to let you know it's coming, because books 2 and 3 just have lower ratings online, with a lot of people often saying they don't like them as much as book 1. And I believe it's just because people don't like the shift and the change. So hopefully if I give you a heads up about it, you'll know what to expect and you'll enjoy them more. So all three books will have a human plotline and an alien plotline, or alien being the uplifted animal species. The beauty and the brilliance of these plots is the incredible contrast between the human and animal societies, how we each make moral decisions, how we each form cultures, our strengths and our weaknesses highlighted against each other. There's also a brilliant symmetry, and this is just... It kind of makes me mad at how good it is, okay? Because we see the alien and animal civilizations rise from the ground up over the course of a great span of years. They form groups and learn to survive, and before long they're creating cities. It's very much like Civilization, if you've ever played it, growing a people from the ground to the skies. In short, these new species are evolving. Meanwhile, the humans now live in a post-apocalyptic situation. Our survival as a species is hanging on by a thread. Resources are running out, people are getting more desperate, and the situation is getting out of hand as social order breaks down. In short, humans are devolving. It's just so brilliant, because the two plot lines overlap each other, reflect on each other, even as they're heading in completely different directions. This is really just a masterclass of writing. Now, that may explain how the plots work across these three books, but I still have to highlight one plot line in particular just because of how good it is. Our main human point of view in book 1 is Holston, a historian. Now, the humans have to travel great distances over many years, and therefore Holston spends a lot of his time in stasis pods and only wakes up when there's actually a job for a historian. And yet, this poor man, every time he wakes up, the situation has changed and he finds himself in a new crisis. The whole plotline is like that one scene from Interstellar with the messages from home that span whole decades. But it's that brilliant heartbreaking scene occurring multiple times and expanded into a full book. Holston's story is literally one of the best I've ever seen, as he watches humanity change again and again over the centuries and struggle to retain a sense of self. It's utterly brilliant. This leads us to another great aspect of this series. Okay, let's get one thing straight. Tchaikovsky does amazing character writing. Okay, like I said, he studied psychology. He understands how the minds work and how people think. But Book 1 prioritizes character writing much more than the other two. Okay, so Book 1 will go deeper with characters and give them arcs, where the later books go deeper into world building and the whole thought experiment angle. So the character writing doesn't get bad in the later books, it's just less emphasized while still being great. Got to give you that heads up. These books all have a very small cast, and we get to know them quite well. First, the human characters are all scientists, explorers, naval officers, people who are on the new frontier of space and leading the search for humanity's future. Now, normally, characters like this are all professionals, right? They're on the job, they're working, so they're always serious. They're wearing a mask and then they never crack under the pressure. This can make it really hard for the reader to see who these characters truly are. And yet this story frequently shows humanity at its most difficult times. So we see sturdy people struggle to keep it together and even break down completely. Like I said, devolving. So we do get to see who they are under pressure, and it's done with incredible accuracy. Now, the alien characters are the real treat here, although they can be hard to wrap your head around. There's only a small number of them, so they're very easy to keep track of, and they have unique personalities, just like the humans. But unlike the humans, they have a unique way of looking at the world. Their perspectives are almost locked in tunnel vision. So in some ways they feel just like human beings, and in other times it's clearer how alien they truly are. And it's not just like a Dr. Dolittle situation where the animal can simply talk. These are uniquely strange characters. They feel both human and non-human. A lot of authors out there try to write non-human characters, but they're rarely done this well. This concept expands as we watch these species evolve over time. The alien characters become a little less limited in their thinking. They become a little more human, while still remaining strange to us. The real challenge is showing how their language is different to ours. So Tchaikovsky has not invented a language, Tolkien style, but the books often have long stretches of prose that explain how the animals communicate, showing how their language is not fully shown in this meager book form, as if the book is just a poor translation of what they're actually communicating. I can't say more without spoilers, unfortunately, but it's just a very clever concept of how these characters communicate in completely different ways and how that affects their characterization. Ah, yes. Now, this is what I really love about science fiction. I swear, there is no other genre that can show the deeper meanings of life, love, the universe, and humanity quite like science fiction. This genre can challenge our perception of the world and make us rethink everything. And Children of Time does this as good as anything I've ever seen. Let's look at a few examples of themes. Theme 1 is sentient life. At what point is another life considered truly sentient? What constitutes sentience? And more importantly, does sentience automatically incur all rights and values deserving of life?
Freedom is the right of all sentient beings.
Theme 2, humanity sucks. Now, I love a good humanity sucks theme, but it's often a very overused theme and somehow at the same time underutilized. Do you know how many writers include a humanity sucks theme just to look edgy and deep, but it's also just kind of shallow and meaningless? It's more like self-indulgent wallowing. But if you look at good examples like Attack on Titan, it certainly has the humanity sucks theme, but specifically by discussing the cycle of violence. So this is a much more nuanced and mature take, and it's far more interesting. So Tchaikovsky does the humanity sucks theme, but by looking at societal collapse, the paper-thin line between humans acting with duty and honor, and instead acting like savage beasts. then contrasting that with the animals acting all civilized. It's a much more interesting way to show this theme. Moving on to theme number 3, blurring the lines between gods, humans, and animals. We may think of ourselves as being above animals and maybe even capable of ascending to godhood. Terry Pratchett calls humans
the place where the falling angel meets the rising ape.
And yet this series shows that maybe those lines aren't as clear-cut as we think they are, and they may even be less flattering than we would like. Maybe we have less in common with gods and more in common with animals. And theme number 4 is social and gender roles. So the humans have roles they play as part of their organizations, and we see those structures breaking down and roles becoming obsolete. But then we see the animal species who have completely different roles. For example, one society is entirely matriarchal, where females are considered to be superior and males are lesser. Now, I've seen this concept done before on Star Trek, and it wasn't done well. Riker seduces his way to equality, which, you'd think would have worked by now if... Anyway, still, matriarchy is shown much better here. Of course, there are more themes. These books are designed to really get us thinking on many levels and challenge our assumptions of the world, as good sci-fi should. So you're probably seeing by now why this is an award-winning series. And yet, did you know that Adrian Tchaikovsky has rejected one of his awards? Here is a crazy side story. This series won the Hugo Award for Best Science Fiction Series in 2023. However, Tchaikovsky has publicly disavowed that award. And don't worry, it's for good reasons. The Hugo Awards are given out by the World Science Fiction Society, and every year this society has an annual award ceremony that's hosted in a different place every time, a bit like the Olympics, it moves around the globe. The 2023 convention was held in Chengdu, in Sichuan, China. Many artists took issue with this due to the Chinese government's extensive censorship campaign and the ongoing human rights violations committed by China in the Uyghur region, an action that is considered a genocide by Amnesty International. Over 100 authors signed an open letter requesting that the convention be moved in protest, but the event went ahead anyway. Now here's where it gets extra controversial. There were multiple works that were judged ineligible for awards without any explanation. People noticed that those works just so happened to be by authors who had been publicly critical of the Chinese government, either in their writings or in public statements. Example of excluded books include The Iron Widow by Xiran J. Zhao and Babel by Rebecca Kuang. Additionally, people were voting for a winner in ballots, and yet thousands of votes were rejected by just a wide range of vague, stupid reasons. Despite this controversy, the awards still went ahead, and 19 recipients took home Hugo Awards, but only 2 of them publicly disavowed the awards in protest of the unfair proceedings of the event. One of those 2 was Adrian Tchaikovsky. So this guy was given an extremely prestigious award, but turned it down, in solidarity of artists being treated unfairly and in defiance of government corruption. And who knows, maybe in a fair world he still would have won, but that didn't matter to him. And I just respect the hell out of this man's integrity. I think you should buy this guy's books for no other reason. Now, this is one of those series that touches on just about everything, even if it's not always major feature front and center. The women in these stories are competent, three-dimensional, real people. There's heaps of discussions around gender roles and just blurring the lines between them in meaningful ways. There is some racial diversity among the human cast, although there's just not that many human characters in the series, so it doesn't show a lot of it. The real diversity here is across multiple species and characters of all kinds of different backgrounds, which fulfills a similar function. And while there's not much time spent on romance or relationships, there is still a hard glimpse of queer characters. There's an explicitly asexual character who has no desire for sex or romance, and even some non-monogamy, with a brief glimpse of 3 people in a relationship with each other. As for the content warning, there is a low level of violence and some horror in this series. It's not over the top and graphic, but it's done properly too. One major feature of the story is the harshness of space. People die in some brutal, unforgiving environments. And this can give a bit of existential dread, because, the universe is so big and we're so small. And the books can be quite dark, with some moments that I felt bleak hopelessness. That said, this story may be about humanity devolving, and yet we don't see a huge amount of graphic violence and extreme brutality and widespread sexual assaults. And I appreciate that. So many writers think that they're being deep by just having a juvenile over-reliance on violence. There are other, more interesting ways to tell a story, and we have that here. Now, is the ending worth it? Well, yes and no. So all three of these books are good, if you're okay with the whole direction shift towards thought experiments we talked about earlier. But at the same time, book 3 is not some grand climactic ending. It's still quite open, and I think it's likely we may get another installment in this series. After all, they were published in 2015, 2019, and 2022, so there's been a bit of a gap between each one. And they are, in many ways, 3 separate stories, so we may get a 4th one or more. So if you're expecting the 3rd one to have some big mega explosion that resolves everything forever, you may be disappointed. But it's still a good ending for that book. I hope that makes sense. And how much should you try? Well, look, the first book is considered the best, and I think it has all the best traits of this series all rolled into one. Honestly, everyone who likes science fiction should try Book 1, Children of Time, at some point in their lives. After that, it's up to you if you want to see this concept explored further. But I hope you'll give this one a try, so good luck and happy reading. Well, thanks for watching. Coming up next, we're continuing our sci-fi theme with Sun Eater and Foundation. Those are going to be 2 very big videos, so I'll hope you'll check them out. So please tell me your thoughts on these 3 books. You know me, I am always happy to discuss books. Remember, if you want to support me, you can check out my shop, my Patreon, or my trilogy of books, The Immortal Investigations. So, otherwise, I will see you again very soon for another deep dive into some great books. Enjoy your day and enjoy a good book. Bye!